Episode 34, Psychological Profiling and Behavioral Threat Detection. Welcome back to Executive Protection Insights. I'm Liam. Today we're going to talk about something that sits at the very core of executive protection, and yet is still misunderstood, oversimplified, or sometimes avoided altogether. We're going to talk about psychological profiling and behavioral threat detection. Not profiling as it's often portrayed in movies, not stereotypes, not assumptions, but the real practical skill of identifying risk through behavior in crowds, in conversations, in everyday interactions, long before someone becomes a problem. Because here's the truth, most experienced protection professionals eventually come to accept. Most threats don't look like threats until it's too late. They don't rush the principal, they don't shout, they don't announce intent, they wait, they watch, they blend in. And if your team isn't trained to recognize behavior, not just appearance, you'll miss the moment when intervention is still easy, quiet, and safe. Why behavioral threat detection matters. In executive protection, distance is safety. The earlier you identify risk, the more options you have. The closer a threat gets, the fewer options remain. Behavioral threat detection exists to buy time. It allows teams to notice something that doesn't quite fit, pay attention without overreacting, and quietly reposition, adjust, or intervene before a situation escalates. This matters because EP environments are often open by design. Public events, hotels, conferences, corporate campuses, restaurants. You can't harden everything. You can't screen everyone. And you can't rely solely on technology, so you rely on human observation. And that observation must be trained. Profiling versus stereotyping, clearing the confusion. Before we go any further, we need to clear something up. Profiling, when done correctly, has nothing to do with race, gender, clothing style, or background. That's stereotyping. And it's not only ineffective, it's dangerous. Real behavioral profiling focuses on what people do, not who they are. It asks simple but powerful questions. Does this behavior fit the environment? Does it match the context? Does it change when attention is applied? Behavioral detection is dynamic, it's situational, and it requires discipline. The goal is not to label someone as a threat. The goal is to identify risk indicators early enough that action can remain proportionate and discreet. The concept of baseline behavior. One of the most important and least talked about concepts in behavioral detection is the idea of a baseline. Every environment has one. In a hotel lobby, people move with purpose. They check in, wait briefly, move toward elevators, or meet others. At a conference, attendees look at signage, check badges, talk in small groups, move between sessions. On a sidewalk, people walk with direction. They avoid collisions. They adjust naturally. When someone's behavior doesn't align with that baseline, it doesn't mean they're dangerous, but it does mean they're worth watching. Behavioral detection isn't about spotting bad behavior. It's about spotting incongruent behavior. How risk reveals itself through behavior. Risk rarely shows up as one obvious signal. It shows up as clusters of small behaviors that together don't quite make sense. Someone who keeps repositioning to maintain a line of sight. Someone who scans people instead of surroundings. Someone who lingers without purpose in a space designed for movement. Someone who appears overly focused on security personnel rather than the event itself. Individually, these behaviors mean nothing. Together, they tell a story, and behavioral detection is about learning to read that story without jumping to conclusions. Stress, leakage, and human limits. One of the most reliable indicators of elevated risk is something called leakage. Stress leaks. Even people trying to control their behavior struggle to fully control their physiology. You'll often see it in breathing patterns, facial tension, fidgeting or self-soothing gestures, changes in posture, sudden rigidity, or unnatural stillness. Now, this is critical. Stress alone does not equal threat. Crowds are stressful, travel is stressful, life is stressful. What matters is whether the stress fits the environment, A stressed person in a stressful environment is normal. A stressed person in a calm environment deserves attention. Behavioral detection in crowds. Crowds are where behavioral detection becomes both harder and more valuable. Crowds provide anonymity, and anonymity can embolden intent. In crowds, trained EP professionals look for people who aren't engaging with the environment the way others are. Someone attending a speech but watching exits instead of the speaker. Someone at a reception who never interacts but constantly scans. Someone adjusting position every time the principal moves. Crowds don't hide behavior. They amplify it if you know what to look for. The power of brief interactions. Some of the most valuable behavioral intelligence comes from short, ordinary interactions. A simple greeting, a polite boundary, a request for directions. How someone reacts to minor friction tells you a lot. Overreaction, disproportionate anger, fixation on access, escalation over small limits. These moments aren't confrontations, they're information. And EP professionals who remain calm, respectful, and observant during these interactions gather insight without escalating situations unnecessarily. Why threats are rarely random. Another important reality is this: most threats don't come out of nowhere. They are often preceded by fixation, grievances, repeated attempts at proximity, escalating behavior over time. Behavioral detection allows teams to spot these patterns early, sometimes days, weeks, or months before an incident. That's why coordination with advanced teams, admin staff, and intelligence matters. Behavior exists in context, not isolation. Common mistakes teams make. Even experienced teams make mistakes with behavioral detection. They focus too much on appearance and not enough on behavior. They react to single cues instead of patterns. They dismiss intuition without analysis, or trust it blindly without evidence. They overreact and create unnecessary disruption. Behavioral detection requires balance. It's not about fear, it's about awareness. Integrating behavioral detection into daily EP work. Behavioral threat detection can't live in a vacuum. It must be integrated into advance work, post assignments, patrol routes, command center communication. Everyone doesn't need to be an expert, but everyone needs to know what to report, how to report it, and why it matters. Often it's not one observation that triggers action. It's several small observations coming together. Leadership and decision-making. One of the hardest parts of behavioral detection isn't observation. It's decision-making. When do you act? When do you wait? When do you escalate? Act too early and you disrupt operations unnecessarily. Act too late and you lose options. Good EP leaders create teams where observations are shared calmly, evaluated thoughtfully, and acted on proportionately. Behavioral detection is not about control, it's about judgment. Key takeaways. So let's slow this down and bring it home. Threats reveal themselves through behavior before action. Context matters more than appearance. Patterns matter more than moments. Observation is a team sport. Early detection creates options. Behavioral threat detection is one of the most powerful tools in executive protection because it allows you to act quietly, early, and effectively. Closing thoughts. Most protection failures don't happen because teams lack force. They happen because teams lacked awareness when it mattered most. Psychological profiling and behavioral threat detection give EP professionals something incredibly valuable: time. Time to assess, time to reposition, time to intervene calmly. When protection teams learn to see behavior instead of just people, they stop reacting to threats and start preventing them. Thanks for joining me on Executive Protection Insights. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay prepared, and remember, the most dangerous threat is often the one that looked ordinary until it wasn't.